As the old saying goes, a happy worky. Wait, I just need to step out of the frame here.
Need to reset. Oh, man.
As the old saying goes, a happy worker is a busy worker. But does that hold true in the real world? How important is morale to productivity? And how do you maintain it in a busy, stressful environment? This is the Culture Clinic, where my co-founder Skay and I are relentlessly learning from HR experts how to build a culture where people love to work. My name is Joe. I'm the co-founder here at Guusto, and today I'm joined with Kwesi Thomas, an HR expert in rewards and recognition. Kwesi, hoping you can give us some insight on this week's topic.
Should be fun. Let's get to it.
Today's topic: how important is employee morale for productivity? So let's kick things off with this, Kwesi. What do you need to be productive at work?
What do you need to be productive at work? You need an environment that's conducive to the work you got to do. You need the tools to do your work. And you need to be able to be rewarded for the work you do. I think you've got those. There are lots of more than that, but I think if you've got the environment to do the work, you've got the tools to do the work, and you're being rewarded for doing the work that you're supposed to do, I think you've got the recipe, the basics for a good work environment and for productivity.
It's as simple as that.
Simple as that. All of those are probably, 15 bullet points deep on each of those three, but, I think if you got those three things, you've got the basics, right?
Okay, so how important do you think morale is to productivity versus other factors like organization and planning, guidance from leadership, individual skills, etc.?
It's important. Morale is important to productivity, right? Let's start with the opposite. Bad morale can hinder productivity so much, right? Good morale can increase productivity, but I think the inverse is way more detrimental to companies, and that's what you want to avoid. You want to avoid bad morale, right? Do you need ultra amazing, super cool, best morale to get good productivity? I don't think you need that, but it's still good to strive for, of course, right? But you want good morale. You want morale, people enjoying the work they're doing, want them to be producing and be rewarded for the work they're doing, and you want them to produce more than you're expecting them to. That is every manager, leader's, company's goal. Goal. Imagine the team that was supposed to give you $1 million, they give you $1.2 million because they're more productive. That's what you want.
Okay, so sticking on this theme of morale here, in your experience, can you identify anything that has a real impact on morale, whether in the right direction or the wrong direction?
Bad leadership. Unrecognized or unrewarded work where people are going above and beyond constantly but not seeing the reward or recognition for that, where people don't understand the value of their work, where the actual value of their work is I guess say unrecognized again, but I don't mean monetarily. I just mean that they don't know why that widget's important. I think that, why am I doing this? And then one of the big ones for me is if the people around them aren't producing, or if the environment around them isn't being held to a standard that they think they can perform at. So often you'll see this where there's a coworker that is just coasting, or who has bad contribution to the morale around, and we don't address it, and we let that slide for too long. Those type of things have really bad impacts on morale when you don't address, things that are going wrong in the workspace.
And so is it possible for employees to have high morale but low productivity, or low morale and high productivity?
Possible. You'd hope less likely, but if you've got high morale and low productivity, usually one of the other things we just talked about in terms of the tools or the reward is not there, but they're still, they're all happy to be there. They all enjoy working with each other. They're enjoying the building they're working, because there's, the building is amazing. But usually, if you've got high morale but low productivity, something else is missing, right? If you've got low morale but high productivity, you've created a great machine. The machine works. It probably works really well. But, I don't know that you could get more out of the machine or improve on your output if you don't have good morale, because those people who are running that machine, that process, that operation that you need them to run, they may not give you the insights to improve it or the efforts to improve it. So I don't think you can sustain high productivity with lower morale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think of someone with low morale but high productivity, someone could be a really high performer but is not a team player and is toxic. Those characters exist, right?
They absolutely do.
Yeah.
Or they're just going through the motions. They have to make 15 calls today. They made 15 calls today, but they did the 15 fastest calls they could possibly make and they're out, right? And so I don't think you can maintain either high morale, low productivity, or low morale, high productivity for any extended period of time. The machine will break down.
Yeah. So thinking through kind of your description of those two situations, high morale, low productivity is likely a company problem. Like there's a problem at the company level that we need to solve to ensure that this person is empowered to take that positive energy and turn it into productivity.
Correct.
Whereas someone with low morale but high productivity is an individual problem, possibly toxic, very self-serving, maybe not a team player, and someone you may want to keep your eye on.
Correct.
Okay, so what are some factors that cause morale to dip that leaders might miss?
Often, if there's something that the leader is doing themselves, and often it's the let's take recognition and actually acknowledging the work people are doing. Often leaders might say, "Hey, I did. Remember a month ago, I told you good job when I walked past you by the water fountain." That and the leader might have missed completely that the person is looking for that approval, that recognition, that that confirmation that they're doing the right thing. So I think often they may miss their own efforts or lack thereof. I think they may miss how important some of the things that the employees ask them about. Often people will tell you what's wrong or what they think is coming up that's wrong. But sometimes we dismiss what we think is a small problem, but to the group of employees or that employee, it's a bigger problem that just stews and stews and stews. So often, for me, the employees will mention it. They'll say, you'll hear remarks or comments or even direct feedback about an issue. It could be as simple as we don't have the right tools. I'll give you one I've worked with developers in the past where they'll say the language or the code they were working in was becoming less modern, less fun, less sexy to work in, and they were asking for new tools. And to us, we're like, you've got all the tools to keep working on our program, right? But to them, they said it over and over to the point where it became an issue that we were losing developers because they wanted to go work in another language or learn React Native at that time or whatever it was. So often people will tell you, we just don't listen.
So you touched on a few things there. It really does make me think that a lack of recognition can be a major blind spot for leaders and managers, right? Like I think of recognition as a skill. Some people have it in their DNA and they are good at saying thank you. They're good at acknowledging people's work. And then a lot of people who just don't have that muscle developed. And if they haven't developed the muscle, it's likely a situation that you don't know what you don't know. And that could be a major blind spot for a leader or manager. And again, being that people generally leave managers rather than leave companies, it's just so important for leaders and managers to ensure that they, one, also have the tools to consistently recognize people, and two, are held accountable to this very important action or this very important skill by senior leadership, right? Really building this into the culture and ensuring that they're consistent at recognizing their direct reports. And what about a lack of growth opportunities as a factor that can cause morale to dip?
It's a factor if the HR muscles that they're like the HR things that they're supposed to have aren't working for a long enough period of time. It'll start hurting morale. So if you're underpaying people for a long period of time, if you're not giving people job opportunities or promotion opportunities for a long enough period of time, then it starts to affect morale. But if you're doing those things reasonably well, you should be okay as those not becoming distractions to morale, right? But if you've got no growth opportunities, everyone's stuck. They can only work on the left Twix line. They can never work on the right Twix line. If you understand what I mean by that. And there, Twix, it comes in twos, and you're like, the one factory makes one factory is the other. If you only work in one factory, you can never be promoted to the other factory, and you're only limited to that. After some period of time, people will look for other opportunities, right? Yeah, so it can affect morale.
So it's hard to keep morale under pressure. In a high pressure environment, how do you balance maintaining morale with production demands?
Yeah, I don't know if I agree. I mean, I don't know if I agree anymore. I think we used to be a state of that statement used to hold true. You couldn't hold morale, you couldn't hold culture when there was a lot of pressure going on, and pressure could have been anything from you have to produce to financial tightening, whatever it is. And I see so many companies do a good job of that now that I don't know if that premise holds true. Let's just assume it does. Then you've got to maintain some level of the you got to maintain the attributes that build your culture. So if that means that you're recognizing people often, you don't stop recognizing people. If that means that you are within the company culture, there's a lot of team projects or a lot of team building work that happens, and you're doing those team buildings still. If that means people are used to having a flexible work hours and can maintain getting the job done you need in that pressure, then people accept some period of time when they have to release the next widget, where they have to work harder than usual, not work harder than usual, or put in more time, assuming that they know that the culture that they're going back to has an end state. Like, there's an end to this, and we'll go back to normal. So I think you can maintain culture and pressure, even if in the extremes. If you're letting go a portion of the company, I think you can maintain the culture if you go through those motions right? If you hold true to the values of the culture that you have while going through any of those pressures, I think you can maintain good morale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you make some really great points there, right? Times have changed, and frankly, a lot of people want to work at high-performing organizations, right? And so there was a time where the work demands were very boxed in to sort of like a set schedule, and now more and more organizations are understanding that as long as the work is being done, there's a lot of flexibility around how people can work, and so people are able to sort of adjust the times that they work, how they work, whether certain portions of their work are done asynchronously, in person, remote. And so all of these sort of new ways of working, I believe, are creating opportunities for people to be higher performers because we're giving them more flexibility around how they're working, and therefore can deliver the work that we're asking them to deliver in the end.
Completely.
So, Kwesi, knowing that people are not robots and morale can waver and fluctuate, how do you know when it's time to take action to boost your team's morale?
I think you've got to pay attention to your team's feedback to you. If you're speaking to them through their one-on-ones, through the work that they're doing, through how they're interacting with each other, I think you'll notice that there are changes in how they're working together and the work they're producing, and it's time to start taking action then. Okay? I don't think there's any magical science to it. I don't think you need to wait for surveys or anything major to know that. I think you have a pulse on your team, or you should have a pulse on your team as a leader, and you'll know when the morale is starting to slip, and it's time to focus on pulling that back up.
And knowing that morale is probably something that we want to be pulse checking regularly. So we should be getting a sense of this as we go through one-on-ones as leaders and managers. But I do think it's also important to ask people during engagement surveys, right? And so how do we tease that information out? Is it as simple as asking, do you feel appreciated? Because feeling appreciated, I believe, has a strong correlation to morale. But are there other questions that we want to be asking?
I think morale should also be a reflection of the values and how people are living or not living the values, or seeing it lived. And so I do like, whatever your values are, seeing how people are scoring on those values. Are they seeing it, and are they living it themselves? I think the questions around the values also give you a good indication of the morale or the pulse of your culture. And then the manager questions, like, a manager understands, those type of questions about your manager's performance also give you a bit of an indication as well. And I've seen some companies just do these, some of these, pulse surveys where it's just one question shows up every week or every other week. And they tease a couple of these questions in there where they can get some of that pulse check on morale as well. And I think that's a really interesting way of doing it.
Okay, so what are some first steps to nurturing positive morale in your team?
First step, find a recognition platform and put it in. No, answer that better. First step, to foster good morale, make sure your team understands what you expect of them and how you expect them to do their job. They understand how to do their job and what's expected. That is an easy way of people then knowing how to behave and how to perform, and then recognize them for the work they're doing well and for the actions you want them to take. And then on top of that, I think you just have to care about the people who are working for you or with you. Okay. There are loads of other aspects, you can talk about team lunches and team activities and team building, etc. I think those are important, but at its core, if you care about your team and care about the people, they understand the work they're doing, they understand how you want them to do the work, like how they interact with each other, and you recognize the work. I think the other ones are a matter of what culture you're building, but I think you've got the building blocks of great culture or good morale, on your team.
Yeah, you mentioned recognition. I really do believe that being clear with leaders and managers around why you should recognize people at the company, whether that's tying recognition back to core values or key behaviors, being really clear about why you should recognize folks and then giving them tools and a budget to recognize people in real time is one of the most powerful and impactful ways to create positive morale at the organization.
Yeah, I think to me, it's essential. It's one of the essential building blocks to me of building good morale and in a large part building good culture.
Kwesi, what metrics reflect the ROI of improving morale that you can sell to leadership?
Coming out of your surveys and pulse surveys, you'll get metrics that you can use to substantiate where the morale or where the culture is today. And if you're doing this over time, how it is moving or progressing positively or negatively. I think those metrics are important when trying to show an ROI. The actual productivity of the work, I think, is important as well, and the progression of the productivity of work. And, there are other sort of anecdotal ones, but in terms of hard metrics, I think those are the two best places to find them.
Yeah, and you touch on surveys, and people are going to tell you how they're feeling. And I wouldn't say I think a conversation with a leader or manager is likely the leading indicator. And then engagement surveys are kind of what come next. And then unfortunately, what happens a lot of times is companies are either not surveying or having these honest conversations enough, or they're not paying attention to the data. And then unfortunately, it can be a tough realization for companies when folks are telling them during an exit interview that they're leaving because they didn't feel appreciated.
If the exit interviews are your source of metrics and data, you're doing it wrong. Because it's too late. I'm not saying you shouldn't be doing them. You should still be doing them. But if you're waiting for that point, it's too late. You should be doing that on a much more frequent basis with the people who are there and working and being productive, right? Still do your exit interviews, not saying you shouldn't do them, but that shouldn't be your source of ROI on morale or culture at all.
If you want to build a culture that motivates your employees to grow into great leaders, check out Culture is the Ultimate Advantage, our free guide to turning your culture into your company's greatest strength. Click the link in the description to get your copy. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the show, please hit that like button and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And don't forget, recognize someone for a job well done today. Mucho gusto.